Thank you all for joining us for a night of fine wine. This is learnaboutwine.com. My name is Ian Blackburn, and we are a part of the Merchant of Wine's effort to bring some great people together around some fantastic wine topicality. Each week we have a different Zoom with a different grape variety, a different place, different producers. And we love the audience that we get together. And then tonight's audience is large. This event is sold out, and we're excited to have you all here to join us again for an exceptional evening of fine wine. Some of the best in the business are here, and we really are appreciative of your time tonight. Let me make sure everything is on board here as the technology has gotten a little harder, but I think we've got it down. Yeah, it's working. Good job. All right. So tonight we're talking about wines of Oregon, and we have assembled a historically great lineup of producers on time with probably the trends and what has been happening over the past 40 plus years in Oregon wine development. And to begin a conversation about great Oregon wine, we got to start with the Erie Vineyard. And tonight we have Amy from the Erie Vineyard here to join us. Hi, Amy. Let me bring you on and spotlight you and say hello. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ian.
I'm so glad you could do this with us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes. And you said 40 years. We're actually moving into our 60th year at Irie.
You guys are a little different. You
Yeah,
guys
so the
were
Love family.
alone. You guys were practically alone there for about 20 years, right?
There was a handful of small producers making wine, really grassroots efforts. It was like 5 families for quite a few years. So the Lett family came to Oregon. It was David Lett coming in to plant specifically Pinot Noir. He was there to find a place outside of Burgundy where one could plant world-class Pinot Noir to the quality standard that they could grow it at in Burgundy. And he had a smattering of other good hunches for what varieties might do really well there. And as you see in the picture here, Pinot Gris was one of those.
Mm.
That's right.
And we picked a wine tonight from your original vines, which I really wanted to do something with you guys that was special and unique. And we're gonna taste a lot of other great Pinots tonight. I actually carry the Pinot Gris and the Chardonnay from the Erie Vineyard, the original plantings, the original vines. I think they're now called the Erie Vineyards.
They are, yes. So we switched the name a few years back to match the vineyard name because we do single vineyard Pinot Noir off of our other 4 vineyards, and they all have their own name. So we actually used to call anything that came off of the Irie Vineyard our reserve wine. That was from about the late 70s when David Lett started making a reserve through about 2015 when Jason was fully starting the single vineyard program. That's when he took Original Vines as the name. And then I guess it was only a few years after that that we renamed it Irie. So there you go. Yeah, we have a new name for it. But it does come from just that original planting that David did in the Dundee Hills. He was the pioneer of our modern wine growing era that we're in today.
Mm.
And this is a really nice map of the Dundee Hills. We're kind of at the south end of the hill. Exactly. Yeah, it's technically in Dayton, but it is sort of the more heritage area of the Dundee Hills. It's very well trodden. Some really pretty amazing neighbors there planted as well.
Oh, here's a little more
Little
specifics.
detail. Yeah, this is our vineyard map. So we have 5 different sites.
Hmm.
The estate is the same size as David left Jason. So he passed away in 2008. Jason had already taken over in 2005, but we've been making the same amount of wine since 1991
Hmm.
between these 5 vineyards. The only one that wasn't planted by David was the Outcrop Vineyard that was actually formerly called Eason Vineyard. And that was purchased by Jason and his mother, Diana Lett, in 2011 and then folded into our way of farming. So we had to convert it over from conventional farming to organic farming on steroids. So we practice a regenerative style of farming that Jason has carried over from his father. His father learned it at UC, well, didn't learn it at UC Davis. He went to UC Davis, but he really learned it on his travels in Europe thereafter, the summer after graduating in the mid 60s, brought it back home, We don't plow our vineyard, so everything that we have is kept. All of our cover crop is kept with that's been planted there for just growing naturally. It's kept down by lawnmowers,
Okay.
and rather than trying to turn the soil over and put anything into the earth. And then we don't water, so it's all non-irrigated, organically certified now.
Would that would be considered no-till, right?
No
That's
till.
yeah. That's cool. I'm seeing more and more wineries adopt that as a
Yeah, more so. You see it a lot more now. It was not like the thing to do in the 60s when David was doing it. And in fact, it was pretty out of fashion for a long time, but we have stuck to it. And I think that you tasted it in the wines, the elegance and just the balance that you get from the ecosystem of the way that we farm.
So 1965, can you imagine the what was going on in his head that brought him? I mean, was there like a singular moment that he told the story of about why he came to this spot and thought Pinot Noir?
Yeah, yeah. So he had gone to Davis to study winemaking and grape growing, as the program was called back then. They didn't have the master's, so he got a second bachelor's. He had his first bachelor's in philosophy, and after serving in the Coast Guard, he wanted to study winemaking after a trip through Sonoma Valley on his way to be interviewed for dental school at UC Davis. He had a change of heart. And his parents totally supported that, and he went to school and he learned from some really amazing professors, and he did his thesis on where outside of Burgundy you could grow Pinot Noir to the quality level there. And he really focused in on three regions, and Willamette was one of them, and obviously the one that he chose. But he was also looking at the south end of the North Island of New Zealand, and sort of the north end of the South Island, the Nelson area there. And then he also looked at Portugal, kind of the north end of the Douro Valley, and then a little bit north into Spain there as well. So there were definitely interesting areas, and he went and he traveled throughout Europe, and he definitely gained a lot of insight from just visiting with producers and really learning how they were doing things back in the day. And
Hmm.
Jason has done the same with his own planting. So he has also brought in a couple of new varieties to the Willamette Valley. So some of you have probably tried our Trousseau. That was brought in by Jason in 2011. So we started producing it in 2014 was the very first vintage of Iris Trousseau. And that coincidentally is also the very first vine that we planted on phylloxera resistant rootstock. So everything at the Irie vineyard, all of the original vine fruit, and really everything at most all of our vineyards, everything planted prior to 2012 is on the original roots.
Wow, unrooted.
Yeah, pretty cool.
There's a shot of a great photo of the vineyard. This is do you know which one of those vineyards we're in here?
Yes, so this is the Rolling Green Vineyard. So we're sitting at this is probably about 650, 700 feet in elevation, kind of looking down southwest a little bit. Beautiful just to see the fog line right there, kind of drop below the hillside. I have to say the Lett family came at a great time. It was, they were really the pioneers of the industry as we know it today. And so they had some pretty choice spots for their vineyard sites. I encourage anyone that has yet to come and visit us to come on out. We have our winery in McMinnville, which is down in the town, about a 15-minute drive away. And then the vines all sit within a mile of each other on the same hillside. And of course, the south end of the Dundee Hills has these undulations and many different microclimates, and our vineyards are no exception, but we have really nice clear aspect to the south where we get a lot more of that diurnal shift, definitely getting the winds coming in off the coast in the afternoon time to cool it all down, and let those vines just mature a little bit slower than they might if they were a little bit less open.
Beautiful.
I like
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
These are the Letts both christening their vines. So this is David back in 1965 with his Pinot Noir and Jason in 2012 with the Trousseau. And so this was just kind of a fun one that we put together, the two of them doing that. Just pioneers in their own right. And this is the team. So that's me. You have a little arrow. Thank you. And then yeah, so this is our crew. It's a really small and very tight knit crew. Everyone is pretty much somehow related to Javier Garcia, who started with us back in the 1970s. Javier is, I don't know, how do I point this from center left? He's got the flannel, just one over. Yes, that right there, that's Javier. And that's his brother to the right. And we have just an incredibly tight-knit team. It's the same team that rolls into the winery and helps Jason make the wines throughout the year too. So everyone is employed year-round, full-time with benefits. We bring in just family friends to come and help us at the actual harvest pick, which is really the only time that we need more help. So it's a really nice, very family-oriented system that's been around a long time.
I don't see any Dodger fans in the group.
I know, I guess you can kind of see where people's allegiances lie. That's right. Jason and his wife Diane were down in the lower corner as well.
There.
Yeah, so this is the label that Jason designed. So it's kind of a cool ode to a little bit in the past and a little bit of just his own touch on it as well. So the handwriting is his father's, and he was able to scan in his journals. He had the most amazing journals, really thorough. And so his handwriting actually we can use to use it as a font to put onto our wine labels. And then it's Jason's visual watercolor tasting note. So if you imagine what it might be like from front to back, kind of reading it left to right, just as the wine enters the palate, mid palate kind of softens, and then there's an intensity and something sort of brooding that is there, and sort of the upper palate is the way that I perceive that too. Without putting any words to it, it would be really like your own interpretation of it. These are single brush strokes that he's able then to compose as a tasting note, which is just really cool and very creative. He's very creative. He's designed all of our labels as well. So even the single vineyard labels for the Pinot Noir wines, which have the Hawk's perspective, the Irie Burr's perspective of the vineyard.
Well, I liked the label before I knew that story, but now that I know that story, that's even cooler to talk about visual tasting note. That's pretty fun.
Super cool. Yeah, we have them on a few. The Trousseau has it too. So these are 53-year-old vines at the time of its harvest in 2019. We today are we're currently sold out of this wine, and you'll see it actually. I guess it's the next slide, but the pricing that you guys have on it is quite good compared with what where the current price lies. It's about double where the Merchant of Wine has it today. We don't make a lot of it. You see 150 cases, 151 cases. This is really just like it's a snapshot of the very first, and I haven't even said this. It's the very first Pinot Gris planted outside of Europe commercially. So a complete experiment by David, and he was able to do this because it had been brought into the UC Davis nursery. He was there. He was the very first person to go. There were, I think, 3 or 4 vines that he was able to take scion cuttings from, and he took everything he possibly could from those vines, and then he was able to bring them to Oregon to root. He had 3,000 cuttings altogether and a theory, of Willamette Valley being a suitable place for cool climate viticulture, really just sitting on those margins of where it would, get ripe, really. In those early years, there were some vintages that were coming up a little bit shorter, which you don't see as much anymore, obviously. We're able to get ripe, but very different times.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a little bit more about Irie's viticulture and vinification. So we treat our Pinot Gris similarly to our Pinot Noir. In the vineyard, it's farmed with the same care and attention as every other vine. We make our Pinot Gris in a style that we call the Oregon style of Pinot Gris because we've never veered away from it. This is the original style that we've always made it in. We will destem our fruit and press it, and it goes into stainless steel where it ferments through primary and secondary fermentation on its gross lees. So it has about a year-long extended contact with those lees, which gives it a very rich mid-palate. And that is just like the full mallow feel that you get from the wine. So really it's got that creamy, really long, beautiful finish. There is no rush on this wine. And we actually also will encourage people to try to cellar their Irie Pinot Gris as long as they might cellar their Irie Pinot Noir. Because you go back into the 80s and the 90s and those wines are fantastic. And it's just sort of remarkable to see. You may not guess that it's Pinot Gris. I'd say I've been in blind tastings with people tasting our Pinot Gris that's from the 80s and 90s, and nearly everyone thinks it's a Chardonnay, which is really amazing. There's no oak on it, but it's the mouth feel. It's beautiful. The balance is incredible. and just the energy of the wines and the way that they age. So some of you probably have had some of our library examples of this. We do a certified library offering each year, and it's 21 steps. It's very labor intensive, and we're able to recondition those bottles to be able to release into the market again as new wines.
It's a great
Yes,
idea.
definitely try if you haven't had the opportunity.
Well, I would
And
say that years ago, I was able to sit with you guys at a tasting here in Los
oh,
Angeles.
good, good. Yes, yes, yes. That's where I met you. That's right.
Yeah, and that stuck with me, and I've carried this wine ever since. And it's just there's something that is fairly luxurious about it. When people say they have old vines, I don't know that you can notice old vines until you know that they're old vines, and then you put this wine in your mouth, and you're like, ah, that's got that old vine wisdom, that
Yes.
richness, that plushness, that
That's a great
added
word for it. The
dimension.
wisdom. Yeah, totally. I completely agree. Yeah, 2019 was a beautiful vintage as well. And you see here about the wine, like one of the most Burgundian style vintages we've had of recent past. So we had scattered rains in 2019, whereas we're more typically seeing our rains come in through a certain number of months in the winter time, and we have drier summer months, but we didn't see that in 2019. So the vines had this really nice refresh whenever we would have a small amount of rain, and it really just having those cooler temperatures kind of roll in and out really created these balanced and lengthy age worthy wines. So if you see this vintage from Willamette, highly recommended.
Excellent. And we didn't make a 2020, right?
We did make a 2020, but we made one Pinot Gris wine in 2020. We also do our estate Pinot Gris, which is the one that is more widely distributed. And we make about maybe 2,000 cases of that. Depends on the year. But in 2020, we put all of the original planting into the one singular wine. So we'll only make this Irie wine, the Irie Pinot Gris, in years where it makes the most sense.
And we got 21 coming, so maybe they can earmark some for me because I'm ready for it when you are.
Nice. Yeah, we're sold out of 21 at our winery, but there is a little bit on the market. I know that our distributor has a little bit in California.
I've
And
been bending them. They're not giving way. We're gonna have to have an email.
I know it's a hard one. It is. Well, the other thing about this is that these wines have phylloxera. So there is a finite period of time in which we'll be able to enjoy these wines. And I really encourage people, if they do collect wine, that this is absolutely a wine that you want to sit on and enjoy for many, many years and look back on. The historical value of what it um, it's yeah, it's well worth what you would be paying for it, especially at the price point that Merchant of Wine has it.
Well, we don't have much. I actually brought some back out of my cellar to put it up for this event. So
Oh, nice. Thank you.
excuse
We don't have
me
much
while
either. We don't have any.
I've already heard the bell ring a couple of times. So I'm sorry, guys. There just isn't much of this, and we really got as much as we could. But I wanted to show this one. Just think it's the right wine. We do
Yeah.
have the Chardonnay from this vineyard too, though, and
Yes.
we just got a reload on that. So we have plenty of Chardonnay, and that's like 95, 96 point Chardonnay from this vineyard too.
It's really beautiful. Yes, Draper clone. So another one brought up by David from California. It was actually the only cutting that he took off of a vineyard in Napa on Spring Mountain. Everything else came from the Davis Nursery. Happy to talk with you more about that. Anyone, any day. You can just find me online. Amy at Irie Vineyards.
You you're amazing. And here's the wine. We do have it on the website now. Yeah, first come, first serve. So if you enjoyed it, and want to lay some down in your cellar, which is highly recommended, please do. Amy, it's a joy to spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ian.
I know that you have
Appreciate
a
you.
fan here in LA, and if I could do anything for you, let me know.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for inviting us. Enjoy.
Pleasure. Fantastic. Great way to start. Having that history, having that connection to something so fantastic. And I hope you all enjoyed that. We have a fantastic group in the room tonight. So let me just take a look and say hi to some folks in the gallery that are joining us. I know that my friend Dan is out there, David K, Lisa. Thank you guys joining us. We started doing this during the pandemic, and we continue every Wednesday night with a different Zoom, and just a great way to get people together. My friend Setsuko's joining us from Japan, David K from Ventura County, Lisa from Santa Monica. Thomas, you're in the Bay Area, right? San Jose or San Francisco?
I'm in Burlingame near the airport.
Somewhere in Giants country.
It is Giants country. Yep.
Yes.
Natalie, you're representing the out-of-staters tonight.
Yep. Nebraska.
You got it. It's awesome. We can't do this on a Wednesday night every Wednesday, just getting people together from all over the place. It's just really fun to do. And I love this tool. So thank you guys for supporting it. We will continue as long as you let us. We move into our next great wine producer, and that's Lingua Franca. And I'm going to share. Can you guys see the screen with Larry Stone on the screen there? So, if you don't know who Larry Stone is, he is been a perennial figure at the top of the wine market for as long as I've been in it. And he was a big deal when I first started, and master sommelier, worked in some of the greatest restaurants in San Francisco, then got into working with some of the great brands, Opus One and others, and really had a storied career in wine before he started the Lingua Franca brand. And I sent Larry an email, and he let us do a little video with him. So let me have Larry say the rest. Here's Larry Stone. Heroes of Oregon Wine would not be complete if we didn't have the actual heroes involved, and we're so pleased to have Larry Stone, master sommelier, wine grower, and founder of Lingua Franca, join us. Hello, Mr. Stone. Thank you for your time today. You've had a storied career from your amazing restaurant involvement, places like Charlie Trotter's and many different restaurants. I know you are associated with some of the best restaurants in California, and have been a master somm for many years. But I got to know you more as you entered into the wine world on the trade side, working for some great brands in Napa Valley, and of course your involvement in Oregon, which I've learned now extends back to the 1980s. Incredible.
Yeah, actually, the 70s.
Into the 70s. And when you were 5, that was incredible. We are here to talk about Lingua Franca, a brand that you helped develop. Can you tell us how you became a wine grower? What happened? What transpired to have Lingua Franca take shape?
Well, I'd been involved in wineries for quite a while, but I made wine. I started making wine and being interested in wine when I was 7, and I made wine. I don't like to use the term winemaking for what we do. It's wine growing. We produce wine, we grow wine. But I did make wine because it was a chemistry project that I wanted to do for myself. And so I bought some juice, apple juice, and I doctored it up to taste like Riesling. So that was making wine. It was a chemistry project. I added acids, added tartaric and malic acid, and did a little ml and got the must adjusted to the right amount of sugar to create a 10%, 11% alcohol wine. So the first wines of Oregon from the 60s I got to taste in my teens.
Lingua Franca took place in what year?
So Lingua Franca, when I helped to create a company called Evening Land, and I recommended the vineyard sites for that company, and the one I really believed the most in was Seven Springs, and and the person who was organizing it, Mark Tarlov, he got a lease on it for a long time. But then finally I thought, well, maybe I'll go and help this Evening Land out. And when I came up to Oregon to look at how it was developing, I saw that it was great. And I was really excited about the wines coming out of there. But where we are, we can see the river. It's only like less than 3/4 of a mile away from our front door. So it means that there's a lot of wind narrowing in that little space. The Van Duzer Gap, which is a break in the coastal mountain range, is directly to the west of us. So we get very intense winds in our part of the world coming over the mountains, over the hill, I should say. It's, not really a huge mountain. It peaks at a little over 1,000 feet. And the east side is all this beautiful volcanic soil that holds water in all summer long from the winter rains.
And your lingua franca brand itself now is continuing to evolve. I mean, you stand on the shoulders of past winemakers in Oregon who really kind of helped discover the opportunities of Oregon, and now you bring in experts, Dominique Lafond, yourself. You've captured this amazing site, and you're making some spectacular wine at your facility. When we talk about the wine that we're tasting today, it's called Avni, which is means stone, right?
Yes, it's a family name, and it's a part of the family that are peacemakers and love to bridge gaps between people who have been, fighting for a while, and so we appreciate what they do. Our whole family believes in peace and in trying to live with all peoples on earth. So it's nice to name it in their honor. It's our Willamette Valley blend, so it's our biggest amount of wine we produce, but it also is based on our own estate fruit. So the Avni Pinot Noir 21 is probably about 80% estate grown. It's all from the estate mainly, but in future it'll probably have less of a contribution. It won't. That's a pretty high contribution still of our own fruit. It was always meant to be an expansion growth part of our portfolio because our own vineyards are limited. I mean, we can grow about 12,000 to 15,000 cases of fruit on our, cases of fruit on our property, but not all of it will be, estate quality, high end, and the lower parts of it, which do have jory soil, we put into the Avni. So the Avni is a little fruitier in texture. It's a little softer. It has a lot of ripe red round fruits in the mid palate and a smooth finish. The idea is to make a wine from those higher yield parts of the vineyard that have great tasting fruit to make it into a wine that's charming at a younger age.
94 points, Jeb Dunnick. Nice score. And we're going to taste that wine right now with our group. Anything more that we need to know about the winemaking process? Is there any stem inclusion, type of use of wood, time in wood, things like that?
Yeah, all those are less important than the place they're grown in. That really is what we want. We use something like between 75 and 80% old oak, neutral oak for any of our aging, whether it's white or red. And we use light toast so we don't taste the oak in the wine. We don't want to taste the oak. The oak is there to help improve the flavor profile, let things come together better, but it's not there to impress a separate flavor upon the wine. Hopefully it won't at all, but there will probably be some spicy quality coming from it. But our vineyard sites themselves have an inherent spiciness to them. So, I think the main thing is that we grow wine and we take so much care in growing it and we have an exceptional site, and we've chosen other great sites in Oregon to source for Avni. I mean, one of them is as good as my own vineyard. So I was really amazed when it came on the market.
Beautiful facility, and you're open for tastings and people can visit?
Yes, in fact, on June 1st, we're actually going to open up a separate hospitality center. It's just a small little place outside the winery. All these other places you're looking at to taste are inside the winery. This is actually on the right side is a banquet. We had a wine dinner last year with Stuart and Brioza from the State Bird and the Progress. He came up.
Well, we're going to taste this beautiful 2021 Lingua Franca Avni with our audience now. Larry, we thank you very much for giving us the time this morning. I've learned so much about your brand and really appreciate you. And We carry both the Avni and the estate wine in the store, and we look forward to staying in touch. And hopefully, I get to see you up in Oregon soon.
Yes, please. I hope you come up and visit.
Very nice. Larry's a wealth of knowledge, and we spent a good amount of time together. We're actually going to post the entire session with him as a separate video on our YouTube channel, because he went into some depth talking about soil types and some of the selection and some of the paths that led him and the brand Lingua Franca and to where they are today. So there's even more to that video. If you're interested, should be posted on YouTube at this time at learnaboutwine.com. This Avni is around $43 and really is a beautiful wine. As we drink it today, I think it's very restrained. Obviously, a lot of Burgundian influence in its design, and I think that this wine has the balance and the gentleness and also the complexity of a Burgundian wine. And I think that that translates to an Oregonian wine, because Oregon is now growing some of the best Pinot Noir in America. And there's such a strong connection between France and Oregon, and a lot of financial interest from the French in Oregon as well. And so you share ideas, you share concepts. There's something distinctly Oregon about the wines as well. And I think that that's where we need to start talking about how they are very Oregonian. And I just think this is a wonderful entry point. This is beyond most entry points, but this for Lingua Franca, this is where they start. And the estate wine that we have, gosh, probably, a 20-year drinking window on the estate wine. There's just, there's a lot of patience in the winemaking and the style that comes forward. So if you like this style, you may want to try Avni, but also consider one of the estates that are also on the website. Before we enter into our next brand, I just want to encourage you, if you have any comments or want to spark up some conversation or talk about anything in particular, the chat box is there for your amusement. And when we produce these events, sometimes we do them without any winemakers, and sometimes we do them with a considerable team involved. And Oregon has always stepped up. I want to say props to Oregon, because whenever we've come to Oregon and said, "Hey, we're doing this," we almost always have a full slate of winemakers and experts that are able to help us, and that makes it fun for us. And really, we're given the gift of your knowledge, your insight, your wisdom. You guys talk it every day. We hear about it, we see it. I get to taste Oregon wines once in a while with the suppliers that come through, and we sell a good and growing amount of Oregon wine because of your guys' involvement in this marketplace. So keep up the good work, but thank you in advance to all of you, Amy, and to the Alexanders and the team at Evening Land that's going to be joining us. We've got just an incredible lineup, and Coriolis is also on the Zoom, and they're going to correct me on how to say the name. Coriolis? I believe that's correct. So we're going to learn a lot of things tonight. Our next guest is Carrie Alexander.
Hi.
Carrie, how are you?
Great. I wish I was tasting all these wines with everyone, though. They look amazing, and looks like a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, no, you guys are
Thank you
part
for
of it.
including us.
I was able to discover your brand a few years back, and you and your husband, right? Is Todd your husband?
Yeah.
You guys have really put together just a really solid lineup of wines, whether they're the GSM wines or the Pinot wines. The Halcyon wines are Pinot Noir, but there's
Mhm.
also a Washington projects that you guys have, and everything I'm tasting from you guys is beautiful.
Well,
And
thank you so much.
this Pinot Noir lineup, when we do our events and we've had your wines involved, it's almost like every single time people are like, wow, I've never heard of that brand before, but that was the wine of the night. So I'm so excited.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm always rooting for you because you know
Thank you.
I like to help the people to discover new things, and you guys are quite the discovery. So thank you. And I discovered it just the same way as others. So it's really great. And it's not something that you're told you're supposed to love. Some of the classics, people
Yeah.
hold them in such reverence, and then you're supposed to like them before you've ever tried them before. But this one I tasted and I was just like, oh, this is fantastic stuff. So I'm so excited to be able to share this with everybody. Let's learn about Halosian.
Thank you. Todd and I moved up to the Pacific Northwest in 2014. We both had been at Bryant Family Vineyard. I also was at Chapelet for a while. And we moved north because we wanted to be able to make Rhone varietal wines and because we wanted to be able to make Pinot Noir. So when he took the position of winemaker at Force Majeure, part of that agreement was that we would be able to make our own wine. So Holocene is really just the two of us. He makes the wine, we put blends together, and then I handle all of everything else: design, customer care, wholesale distribution, everything. And that's the same pretty much for everything that he does. He makes the wines and then I sell them and market them.
Lucky man.
What's that?
Lucky man.
And we really have fun working together, and it's kind of all we ever do, but because we love it, it doesn't really feel like all we're ever doing is working.
Know what you're talking
But
about.
so Holocene started in 2015 with just one wine, and that was the Memorialis, which comes from Yamil Carlton. That wine we've been making ever since. It comes from the Monksgate Vineyard. Totally different than the Apocrypha, and that's kind of the idea. So the winemaking is always the same. He changes it for what vintage, what the vintage gives him. But as far as the single vineyard wines, which we now have 4 of, he makes the wines the same each year so that you really can, if you sit down with a bottle of each in front of you, you can taste the difference in the place. So Apocrypha comes from the Antiquum Farm vineyard, which is almost to Eugene. Like, it's much farther south. It's an hour south of Yamil Carlton. The vineyard itself is at 800 feet. It is a volcanic site, south facing, about 14 acres. And it's farmed in what they call graze-based agriculture. So it's going beyond what requirements are for organic farming and actually trying not to have inputs come from anywhere outside of the site itself. So all of the compost comes from the animals on the property. The mowing, there's no tilling. The mowing is happening by sheep and pigs and ducks, geese. There's all kinds of animals roaming around down there. It's a warmer site. The wines tend to deliver a little bit darker fruit. It's not as much of the bright red. Darker fruit, really nice minerality. Just a really, our experience in pouring this wine in particular for people is that a lot of people who don't know that they like Pinot Noir, when they try this wine, they're like, it opens their mind a little bit, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, there's some wonderful textural things that you achieve, and it stays so varietal, but gives a little extra pizzazz and panache and
Mhm.
and it comes in the form of texture and richness and layers. And I'm pretty sure that's some of that Bryant family sauce spilling over.
Yeah, that's probably true. The wine's 100% whole cluster in this vintage, and unvined and unfiltered. Only about 10% new oak. That picture is that's Monk's Gate.
Monk's Gate. Okay, so this is
Mhm.
for the other. This is for the other wine,
Yep.
Memoralis.
Yeah.
Which we carry both, by the way. If
Yeah,
you're,
I know you do.
we, and they are different, definitely.
Way different.
And uh, these 21s, when I first got them, they were so young because you guys were out of all wine. You released your own one, so I grabbed them. Man, this thing is just so lush and wonderful at this point, and it's really it come a long way in the past, I don't know, 6 months, maybe nine
Yeah.
months that we got it, and really showy, sexy stuff.
Mhm.
I love the new label too. I think that
Thank
it's
you.
obviously a little departure from the past label, but
Yeah.
it's very telling, very cool, very upscale. I like it.
Yeah, when we decided to grow this, so we've been at about 400 cases all the way up until 2021, we're about 400 cases. And then in 2022, we expanded to 2 more vineyards and we're making almost 1,000 cases. So we grew it quite a bit in 2022. And in preparation for that, we wanted to have a cohesive look so that the brand was recognized as a brand. Um, and the water drops, that just speaks to trying to make wine from fruit that is not irrigated and that is dry farmed, because we all know how precious water is. Um, so that's kind of where that comes from, is just the thought about how important water is to everything, really, but also to winemaking, wine growing.
Are you guys getting snow right now?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's can be an interesting harvest or cycle this year, just because
Yeah.
we are in March.
Yeah, we're in the Walla Walla Valley and we're actually in the Rocks District. That's where we live. And there was a pretty bad freeze for about 5 days. And I think a lot of the vineyards in that area are probably down 70% um for fruit for this year already.
Just because they won't have the capacity to make it
Yep.
frost. Well, 100% whole cluster in this.
Mhm.
I won't say baby because it is young, but this is a big boy. This is got a lot of character to it, a lot of polish as well.
Mhm.
Really a style I enjoy. I also enjoy it because it's different and it's different ideas, but all very high quality ideas, and that's what's so wonderful about this business. And I really hope that the group that's watching the Zoom tonight enjoys this. And again, try the Memoralis wine as well. When we do these shows, we have to pick which wine we're going to show. Like, which one should we show? And uh,
Yeah,
so,
I think the Memorialis is a little bit more what you would expect from a Willamette Valley Pinot Noir.
okay.
It's a beautiful wine. It's one of my favorite wines that he makes. Definitely a little brighter red fruits on that wine, but still kind of some like mushroomy kind of forest floor flavors. Is there a question? What's the oak influence?
Yeah, are you 100% French, and how much new?
It's 100% French on everything, and it's 10% new.
There you go. So, and I also carry the Force Majeure wines as well, and they're gorgeous. And so take a look at those on the website if you want to become a Alexander fan. It's Carrie and Todd, they're definitely still in that discover me mode.
Sure.
But I did not know that this is the brand that you own. This is your own project, and Force Majeure is, you're basically an employer, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's owned by other people.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Another shot here. Is this our vineyard for the wine that we're tasting tonight? You froze there on me, Carrie. Can you hear me?
Oh, did I? Sorry.
This is our vineyard that we're tasting now.
That doesn't, I mean,
That doesn't look like it.
it doesn't look like it to me.
No.
No.
Okay.
Well, for one thing, it's smaller and a little bit more like enclosed by trees
Okay.
than that.
I wonder what she got. My designer does a good job, but I don't know where she gets.
I mean, that is beautiful, and I wouldn't mind being there. That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, here we are with our pricing around $65 for this wine. So if you're a fan like we are, please support the Losian brand and check them out. 96 points, some big scores on these wines every year. And once you get bitten by these wines, you'll be back.
Thank you. That's really kind of you to say that.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for supporting the event tonight. And I'll look forward to talking to you again about some other upcoming activities that we would love to have you guys involved in, because you really make our event special. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Before we go to our next brand, I want to thank again all of the producers for their time tonight. They've worked all day long and then give us a little time into the evening time. So it's a lot to ask of them, but we really appreciate them, and it's so great to learn from directly from them as well. That's why I really enjoy putting these together. Now, the next wine brand maybe caught your interest earlier. Certainly, a famous producer that has been growing in notoriety for years, and that's Evening Land. And we've got Julie Wiggin with us tonight. I met Julie a couple of months ago, and every time I talk to her, I'm convinced she's a top representative. If I owned a wine brand, I'd love to have Julie Wiggin representing it, because she's really on top of her stuff. So thanks, Julie, for being with us.
Thank you, Ian. It's really nice to hear. Glad to be here.
Keep talking to me because I got to share your screen. I'm looking for you.
Yeah, glad to be here. So I've worked with Raj and Sashi for the last 6 years, actually, as of this month.
Wow.
And I've worked with them in a few different capacities, a lot in Lompoc, so at the brands for Sandy, Domenico Lacote, Pietrasassi. But definitely with all the brands, including Evening Land, and just really lucky to work closely with them and have them as some of my mentors.
Yeah, they're pretty great people to surround yourself with, and certainly on the growing on the international front, and their reputation
Mm-hmm.
as a vigneron. And
Exactly.
I've met Sashi when he first got started with Stoltman back in the day, and I met Raj Par when he was at a great restaurant up in San Francisco working with my old boss, as he was a sommelier on the floor. And you could just tell both these guys had, you know, the world in front of them. Just whatever direction they wanted to go, they were going to make something special out of it. So great to be able to taste the fruits of their labor tonight. And I didn't want to mess it around. I really went after one of the top wines. I don't know if this is the top wine, but it's, to me, in my mind, it's one of the top wines available to us to taste from Oregon. And this is a special offering. So we're going to learn a little bit about it. We're back in that same zone. As we talked with Larry Stone earlier, we're really just basically right next door. Is that correct? We're right in this area?
Yeah, so we're actually on the same road as Lingua Franca. So we're just a little bit higher on the slope, but exact same area.
Perfect. Well, let me break from this slideshow because you supplied us with something pretty special to be able to share with everybody. So let me get that open. Sure, got that right.
Yeah, Sashi's traveling, or else he would love to be here. And so we have a video where you can see a little bit more of the vineyard and hear from them a bit more directly.
Perfect. Let's go for that. I'm going to expand the screen. Can everybody see the black screen? Is that working?
Absolutely.
One of the questions that has never really been able to be answered scientifically is this feeling that a lot of vignerons have that whatever is surrounding their vineyard is contributing a quality to the wine. And I think the beauty of Seven Springs, the fact that there is so much natural vegetation there in terms of the Douglas fir, all of the beautiful botanicals that are growing in the vineyard, the flowers, all of the aromatics that come from those plants are contributing. We wanted to work with the best site in Oregon for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It was very clear to us from our experience that Seven Springs was clearly one of the most special sites in the Willamette Valley.
It's a profound place. It's an amazing place to walk and hike, and it's amazing working in the vineyard and just, it's beautiful. It's got beautiful trees all around it. It's a forest.
What I am really keen on is this idea that a piece of property, its best use is to plant a vineyard there, to make wine there, to use wine to express that. All of the best vineyards that I've visited in the world have this quality. Since 2014, getting to know the Seven Springs Vineyard more intimately, it's become more and more clear to us that this particular site belongs as a vineyard, that is its best use.
And what's special about Seven Springs is not only that the vines are old, there's vines back from the 80s. Also, it's east facing. So you get the morning sun and then the sun is above. And so it's really, and you don't get that burn in the grapes. And all these different parcels planted in, a pretty similar way. And you can see how different they are just because of geology. And the blend is usually the most interesting part because you can see the different components of each parcel comes together into one complete wine. Seven Springs Pinot Noir always has the perfume, has that kind of cranberry. It's a little ashy, slightly green herbal note, but it's light. It's never heavy. It's not dark. It's not burly. The Chardonnay is extraordinary. It's always flinty, mineral, lemon, lime. You never see tropical notes. It's never blousy and rich and oily. It's precise. It's fresh. It's zesty. Yeah, lots of energy.
It's really the opportunity to share a vision for a place and being able to bring people to Seven Springs, show them what we're doing there, what the next chapters are going to be, what the next projects are going to be, how we're going to express that place. That's, for me, the best part of making wine.
Outstanding. Thank you. That is great. Can you still see my screen? All right, can you see the map there? Go back in and learn a little bit more. When did this partnership Evening Land really get going, and with Raj and Sashi kind of leading the surge there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think it's a helpful distinction to make also coming from that video that Evening Land is the brand, which started in 2007, but we are entirely focused as a brand around the Seven Springs Vineyard, which was planted in the early 80s. And so originally the vineyard with its owner and original founder, Al McDonald, just sold grapes. Al didn't make any wine himself, but just through selling fruit, Seven Springs as a vineyard became well known in the Willamette Valley for having exceptional quality fruit. And so when Raj and Sashi, with the original Evening Land crew, which included Larry Stone and Dominique Lafont, when they were setting out to make wine, they really wanted to find the best vineyard site possible. And so that was clear that Seven Springs was, among the best. And so there was this original crew in 2007 that started the brand. And then in 2014, Raj and Sashi became the sole directors of the estate. And so as of 22, we actually own the whole land as well. So it's been a process, but I would say that we've officially been the stewards of the land since 2014 and now own the vineyard as well. And so it's been definitely a process, but we're really, really honored and grateful to be the stewards of this beautiful vineyard.
Fantastic. How many total acres is that?
So the whole property is over 200 acres, but right now we have 113 planted.
Oh,
And we are very proud of our Pinot Noir, but we're also really excited about planting more and more Chardonnay. Really excited about the future of Chardonnay in the Willamette Valley. Like Raj said in the video, he really finds that it's truly exceptional. And so I think, Pinot gets all the press that it deserves, rightly so, but we're just really excited to be helping shine a light on Chardonnay. And I think it doesn't, it doesn't hurt that Dominique Lafont was a part of that as well in the early days, bringing the Burgundian stamp of approval to vineyards doesn't hurt.
that's true.
Mhm.
And 100 plus acre vineyard and planted in the 80s. So we're 40 plus year old vines. That's some great material to be working with at this point.
Mhm. Some
And
of the oldest vines have been torn out because of phylloxera, and so that was pretty recent. It was but just been in the last few years. So some of those original vines aren't there anymore, but we do still have a lot of old vines, which we're really, really lucky to work with. And there is a special wisdom to those old vines.
so this is a look at the bottle that we're tasting. And this is 2021.
Mm.
Optimal drinking window. What are they saying?
Yeah, so yeah, at least, our reviewer at Wine Spectator here said to drink now through 2032, but I would say that our style is it's really whatever you prefer. I think that the Pinots in general have a freshness to them, which is a goal of ours. Both Raj and Sashi love wines that are marked by freshness and vibrancy, but also, how food friendly they can be. Both Raj and Sashi started out as chefs, which I think is a very interesting place to start, getting into wine from the position of food and everything coming back to the quality of your ingredients. And for us, it's grapes, of course, but so I think that they have a freshness, which means you can drink them now, but also we prefer wines with age too, and so if you'd like to hold on to them, you should. I think this wine is tasting really lovely right now, but I recently tried some of our 14s and they're beautiful. So with time, I think that they only gain complexity, but it's really up to your preference whether you like a really, more primary fruit forward wine or something with some of those savory qualities that Pinot takes on with time.
assistant winemaker John Faulkner is going to give us some tasting notes on this wine and talk a little bit more detailed about production.
2021 La Source Pinot Noir is taken as usual from vines on the property which are older and grown in shallower soil, and they're therefore a little less vigorous, and they produce fruit that's naturally more concentrated. Here in the winery, we tend to ferment La Source with some whole bunches. And we do so because the grapes are really phenolically ripe, and we're able to make a wine that has great concentration and poise. 2021 in particular was problematic only in the middle of summertime when we had some terrible heat waves. But Oregon and Oregon grapes are quite accustomed to really, really hot summertime temperatures. So fortunately, the vines didn't sustain any significant damage, and nor was the crop at all compromised. And the harvest time, fortunately, was moderate again in temperatures, and we harvested, I think, just on the earlier side of average.
So La Source is the name of the vineyard, Seven Springs Estate.
Yeah.
And Evening Land is the name of the brand.
Mm-hmm. La Source is specifically the parcel that it's coming from. And so Seven Springs as a property has a lot of beautiful water sources. We have a waterfall on the property that's gorgeous. Of course, Oregon gets lots of nice rain, and so there are actually underground springs. And so, of course, the name of the vineyard, Seven Springs, will indicate that, and La Source in French means the spring. And so this is really, I would say, our benchmark wine. This is one of our top cuvées, as you said, and it's coming from the very top of the slope at the vineyard where the soils are the weakest. And so I always think that this is just one of our best, and most quintessential examples of Pinot from the vineyard.
Well, thank you, Julia. Appreciate you being here tonight. Got a couple photos to set the mood. Also a couple more slides that I probably should have shown earlier, but that we learned from the winemaker about the whole use of whole cluster,
Mm-hmm.
new wood, old wood. We're at 86.95. The wine recently received a 97-point score. That's one of the top scores I've seen on Oregon Pinots this year in 2021. So, and Chardonnay also got a top score. So you guys are on a serious roll. Well, wonderful to have you on the Zoom. We really appreciate your knowledge and insight, and thank you for giving it to us.
Pleasure to be here. Cheers, guys.
So, and whenever we put these together, we never know, exactly what order we're going to go in. And but I think we did a pretty good job tonight of showing some really different angles on things. And I'm super excited to talk with our last producer tonight. Antica Terra is a brand that's gaining a beautiful reputation, and the agency that I buy the wine from presented this opportunity to buy wine from the winemaker of Antica Terra. Her name is Maggie Harrison, and she has a great reputation, has worked for a set of top brands, including Cinquanon, and now has started her own brand here at Antica Terra. This is something that's made for charity, and I want to get it all correct. So let's bring Antica Terra into the show with us tonight and add the spotlight there. Say hello.
Hi, how are you? Saving, me for last. It's
Yeah.
tough show to follow there. But thank you so much for having me and for having our wine. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor. What a great crew of Oregon wineries to be a part of. So thank you.
My pleasure. Well, I took a flyer on buying your wine, and I
Yeah.
read about it, and I said, let's go for it. Let's give it a shot. And wow, I've been so impressed. Just really beautiful stuff. Can you take us through it a little bit? And so
Sure.
there's a charitable aspect to the brand.
There is, yes. I mean, so like, 30,000-foot view. Antica Terra is a winery based primarily in the Eola Amity area of the Willamette Valley. Maggie Harrison is the winemaker. She had her, she cut her winemaking chops, as they say, at Sine Qua Non down in California for 8 years before she received an offer to come up and be the winemaker at Antica Terra. 3 partners had visited a vineyard that was for sale, and they approached her and said, "Hey, would you ever want to come up to Oregon?" And she's like, "No way. I live in Santa Barbara. Like, it's beautiful down here. I'm making wine. I'm making Syrah. I'm doing, exactly what I want to be doing down here. You guys are crazy." And they're like, "Okay, we hear you. Would you just come look at the vineyard and tell us what you think?" She said, "Fine, I'll come look at the vineyard." And then, whatever article you read or interview you happen to come across, it's either between 26 seconds and 1 minute, but she's on the phone with her husband saying, "We're moving to Oregon." And that's kind of how it started.
That's awesome.
The vineyard, the Antica Terra, which means essentially old land or old earth in Latin, is an 11-acre vineyard that is planted in a really unique geological site. It's planted to an ancient oceanic seabed, basically. They had to blast holes into the rock, essentially, to plant the vines. So there's really no topsoil there. So the vines are incredibly stunted. The clusters end up being, like basically can fit on the, within the palm of my hand, which is not a very big hand. And they have almost more of a Nebbiolo-ish quality than Pinot Noir in a lot of ways, just because they are so concentrated and compacted and they struggle so hard to grow. That's a little bit about Antica Terra in itself, and what brought Maggie to the Willamette Valley from California and from, such a legendary winery as Sine Qua Non is. So the first vintage that she produced from that vineyard was in 2006. You can still find throughout the Willamette Valley and around some bottlings of the original Antica Terra vineyard. It says Antica Terra on it. And the wines are super solid. It's really interesting to find them and visit them and be like, wow, okay, this is what the vineyard presented back then. But now things are definitely a little bit different. That's the only, a lot of winemakers and people that we've just heard from and have talked with are definitely, there's a lot more about place. There's a lot more about procedure and winemaking and, is it a single vineyard? What's the cooperage? What's the new oak? Like, what's the percentage? Like this, Maggie makes wine in a way that is completely different than anyone else. Maybe not anyone else, but at least in Oregon for sure. So there is this process that we go through. She goes through at the winery of extreme scrutiny. So we use the Antica Terra vineyard to make one single vineyard wine. That's the only single vineyard wine that we make. It's called Antikythera. It is not produced in every vintage, but it is produced in most vintages, maybe at a tiny quantity, but it is generally produced, but just maybe in a very small quantity. We also source fruit and have land contracts with about 6 vineyards throughout the area. But what really is important about the process is that all of that fruit comes in and is destemmed. And then it goes through a second sorting process. It's sorted in the vineyard, then it's destemmed, then it's sorted berry by berry along the sorting line, just to make sure that every single piece of fruit that goes into these wines is the highest expression of the fruit that's coming in from that vintage. After that, the wines go into barrel. And this is a unique thing about Antica Terra. There's no pre-designation of what happens with cooperage or winemaking in that regard. Every year there is new oak, but not every year do the same vineyards go into the same oak regimen. Some shea might go into new oak one year, it may go into neutral oak or, like 5th passage oak the next year. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily to the oak that we use, the size, the cooperage, any of those things. The wine goes into barrel, and then after it goes through its aging and process, The most important aspect, I think, of the winemaking that Maggie and the team does is the blind blending process, in which a vial or, you know, a sample from each barrel, which constitutes around 150 barrels from every vintage, is taken. Those barrels are numbered, or those vials are numbered, but no one knows what those wines are. They don't know where it came from. They don't know what the oak percentage is. They don't know, you know, they're all tasted blind. And then it's a process that happens between 3 and 4 days of putting all of those different components in and asking the question, what is the highest wine? What is the most beautiful expression of this vintage that we can make from these different components? And that is how the wines at Antica Terra are made. Every year, as a result of that, there are barrels that don't go into those final blends. They may still be the most lovely wines possible, but they don't fit the final composition that, you know, sits at the highest level for either Antikythera or Botanica or Ceres or Oberlin. Those are primarily the 4 Pinot Noirs that are produced at Antica Terra. And same with the Chardonnays. There's Akerin and Orata Chardonnays that are produced in most years. Sometimes the Chardonnay goes through the exact same process of blind blending. And then at the end, if there's Chardonnay that doesn't go into those 2 wines, it sits out. But these barrels are still tremendous. They still have so much potential. And in those instances, Maggie will choose to bottle and label those wines under a second label called Coriolis. So here you have Coriolis. That's a very long-winded story to get to where we are now. I'm so sorry, but hopefully that explains
good to
the
get
whole
that. Got to have that texture.
Yeah, the whole thing. So Coriolis is a really interesting situation, right? Because it's these wines that, you know, they're made in the exact same way. They go through the exact same process. They have the same potential as the wines that are labeled under Antica Terra, but they just don't fit the expression from that vintage that go into the final bottlings under the Antica Terra labels. So normally Coriolis is sold primarily to retailers. It's never sold on premise to restaurants, so you will never find it on a restaurant list. It's sold only for retail partners to be able to sell to their customers, primarily is what happens in the United States. Or we send it to partners, international partners as well, to sell it there. So there's questions of like, why don't you just sell it bulk? Why don't you just make more wine? Like the Antica Terra production is very limited, and we are in a position now of very high demand. So there is scarcity of those wines. So Maggie could just easily put all the wine into Antica Terra and we could sell it all, but that's not the point. The point is making the most beautiful thing from each vintage. So Coriolis exists as, you know, sort of a counterpart to that. And it's an incredible opportunity to be able to try a wine from Maggie and from the same fruit and the same process that goes into Antica Terra. But you know, it's a rare opportunity to be able to have it, I guess, in this setting. And
at a price point.
And at the price point, yeah, it's true. It's pretty special right now. So I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty sort of avant-garde approach to winemaking in a lot of ways, but the wines are tremendous. You know, they're all the vineyards are organic. We can't say that definitively. That's Maggie right there. And all of the wines are bottled, unfined, and unfiltered. So, you know, they're all foot trodden. It's a very intentional approach to winemaking for sure. And that's Coriolis right there. Coriolis is a name that exists. It's a phenomenon in which essentially a force moves over another force, creating atmospheric impact, basically. I see a question here about charity. Yeah, so any of the goal is to not make money off of these wines. It's to put these out there, and anything that we do sell does go to charity. For sure. And right now it changes every year. But it was on the last vintage, the 2009, a cancer charity here in Oregon.
And when I pay the winery, they take the proceeds from the sales.
When the distributor pays the winery, yeah, exactly.
So that's how they profit from selling these wines, and it's just a really to be able to get access into this circle Antigua Terra is very sought after producer. I don't think you'll see much available out there in the retail space. It's very much a direct to consumer type of approach to selling wine. A very desirable visit when you go into to Oregon, as are all the producers that we're showing tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this is just something special. Now, are you at liberty to tell me anything about the Syrah that we carry as well? Because we've got both the Pinot and the Syrah.
And sure. The Syrah, so Maggie also makes wine under a second label called Lillian, or another label. It's not second, it's a counterpart to Antigua Terra. It's the label, it's the first wine that she made on her own. It was a special vineyard that Manfred and Elaine Kronkel were going to use for Sine Qua Non, and they decided not to use it. And they offered Maggie sort of first dibs on the Syrah vineyard in California. They said, would you like to, we love working with you. You've been amazing. Would you like to make your own wine? And she said, oh, wow, I'm not ready, but okay. So she took the fruit from that vineyard and made her first vintage of Syrah under the Lillian label. She still makes Lillian to this day, but the fruit obviously comes from California. It's harvested and then brought up to Oregon overnight in refrigerated trucks at harvest time to the winery. And so the wine is vinified in Oregon, grown in California, vinified in Oregon, and it goes through the exact same process as the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay blind blending processes. So Coriolis Syrah exists as the wines that were not identified as being Lillian wines, but to be bottled as Coriolis in that instance. So usually there is a Syrah Coriolis, a Pinot Noir Coriolis, and then occasionally Chardonnay Coriolis as well. And that's how the Syrah exists in this instance.
Thank you for that explanation.
For sure. The wines, I mean, the Syrah is, I love it. It has the body and the structure and the texture of Syrah, but exists like there's lift and light to it. That's really lovely.
Yeah, for sure. The way I was tasting it with a group, and some people had some more insight and shared some of the story with me too. Told me, this tastes like if Sine Qua Non was made by a woman, it would have a more feminine accent to it, and this is like Sine Qua Non in that regard. So
that's true. Actually, other people have said that for sure. That's that is a good observation, I think, or at least makes sense in a lot of ways. Someone had a question just behind the tastings at Antigua Terra. So just really quickly, David, I think you asked a question. I'm not sure if you're still here, but at Antigua Terra, when you come to taste at our winery, we pour a flight of 8 wines. 4 of them are from Antigua Terra or Lillian, and 4 of them are from not our wines. We always try to integrate and show wines that inform and inspire the winemaking process at the winery. They're winemaking heroes of Maggie and the team. They're exciting wines that someone tried and is like, hey, this is amazing. Let's show this in our collective flight. So when you visit the winery, it's always a really amazing opportunity to taste other wines as well. And that's definitely a unique aspect to our hospitality program at the winery, which is cool. We also, just as like a little plug, we've been in what Maggie fondly calls a garbage can in Dundee for the past however many years, 2 decades. We just recently acquired the old, or the Keeler estate in Amity, and we are in the process of moving our production and our hospitality there. So we will have a legitimate bona fide winery to host you, and should you ever come to visit, we would love to have you.
is this one of your tasting rooms here?
This is one of the bay in the garbage can, as you will. Outside, I mean, it looks lovely there. You step outside and you're in a warehouse. It's very unassuming, but it's a really, they've created an extremely special place to have a tasting for sure. And that's the Antigua Terra vineyard right there.
Ian,
Yes,
the question.
yes.
So I'm David. So just to let people know
Hi,
on the
David.
Zoom, hi there. We just finally got on your allocation list, which it took a while, but we tasted. So just for people to know, you go to visit, the area is beautiful, and we ended up, I think, tasting in 1953 Burgundy, as part of the tasting. So I'm just throwing that out there. If you go, you never know what you're going to get. And that was a complete wow. So thank you. The wines are amazing. It's really quite a story, and everything tonight's been incredible.
Thanks,
Thanks,
David.
David. Definitely.
Yeah, lovely. Well, really a beautiful night to spend with you all. Thank you so much. I think it's perfect that it rained tonight in LA, kind of ties us to Oregon.
We're there with you in spirit, clearly.
Thomas, I hope you enjoyed the tasting. Thank you so much. Natalie and Natalie Brill, thank you guys for joining us. Was this your I'm trying to see. Oh, no, I see who's sitting next to you, Natalie. He's on a lot of our Zooms, so we thank you very much for joining us.
It's Tony.
Yeah, hey, Tony.
Yeah.
Good to
So
see you.
brought my wife along this time.
Yeah, I don't normally see your wife, and her name's on the Zoom box, so that's why.
Her computer.
It's my computer.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Go Dodgers.